Hi, welcome back to True Story with John Gibson. Today's guest is the founder, head instructor of Valko BJJ, Jay Valko.
John, how are you?
I'm doing well, doing really well. Jay, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. So for those who aren't aware, Jay is my BJJ instructor, totally opened up this whole world for me, and has been, I guess, truly, I think he was probably, if not the first person I asked, maybe the second. And, it's just taking this long for us to figure this out, but I've really been looking forward to this forever. So again, thank you, Jay, so much.
Of course. I can't believe you've done 40 episodes already. I didn't know if it was going to go anywhere, but yeah, you've done a lot with some good athletes.
I appreciate that. I've just been really lucky and I stay very busy.
Yeah.
I figure if I'm not going to sleep, I might as well do something productive. I don't know. But yeah, so I met, just for some context here, I met Jay probably 2.5 years ago or so, closer to 3. Just, I wanted to try some jiu-jitsu out and I was looking for a goal, and there was like a Naga tournament coming up. And, I was kind of apprehensive about the whole thing, like anybody is trying to probably start something new in their mid or late 30s. And so I started with privates. I just wanted that one-on-one to kind of like get a little bit more comfortable and just sort of have that one-on-one, sort of attention before I felt more comfortable integrating into a group environment. And with that, I was lucky enough to start working with Jay, and instantly, I just feel like, and I'm saying all this, Jay, that there's a compliment and a question here coming, I promise. but for me, I really value like teachers. I really value that. And because I was not a good student. I was never a good student. And even in sports, I was never I wasn't someone you threw a ball to and I was good innately. I had to practice, I had to learn, and I had to work at that. So it took a good teacher and mentor for me to be successful in like anything I do. So I value that, and I learned very quickly, at least for me, Jay was an amazing teacher, amazing coach, amazing instructor. And then I fell in love with jiu-jitsu simultaneously, So I say all that to say this, Jay, when did you first found Valko BJJ? I guess, how long has it been in business? And then we'll kind of go backwards into you personally, but I'm just interested a little bit more about the academy.
Sure. Yeah. I opened in 2007, in March of 2007. I was a brown belt when I opened. It was mostly just happenstance. It wasn't something that I was actively looking to do at that time. But somebody basically recruited me. He opened a gym and was looking to put jiu-jitsu in the gym. So he got in touch with me and asked if I was interested in doing it. And I said, yeah, sure, of course. And we started doing it. And here we are 13, 14 years later.
Yeah, it's amazing. And hundreds, if not maybe 1,000 or some students probably.
Well, I wish I had 1,000 active students. No, we're not.
No, I mean over the term.
Through the door. Yeah.
These many years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess, was it never your ambition to found? I guess not, right? To found a school, and was that sort of never?
It was in the back of my mind. Yeah, it was in the back of my mind. So when you're learning jiu-jitsu, you're learning a skill that you can take anywhere in the world with you. So I always knew that I could take that and teach if I wanted, and I did have in the back of my mind that maybe one day it'll be fun to teach. But I was only 26 when I opened the school, and I wasn't even a black belt. So it wasn't at that moment, but it was in the back of the mind, at least as a possibility.
Yeah. One thing that's really impressed me too, just kind of about you on just watching you on the peripheral, especially through the pandemic. I mean, in my opinion, I think you're a great business owner, man. And I could tell from some of the things you've posted on social media and stuff, you're pretty cerebral. You're a reader. I could tell you have a lot of interest in finance and things like that. And the reason I note that is because not something you automatically equate with a jiu-jitsu player and I just think it's pretty cool that you have sort of this thirst for knowledge as well. But I guess where my question is how did that happen? You're a business owner. Was that something just innately in you? To be an entrepreneur?
I don't know. Growing up, my parents both owned businesses, small businesses, but they never taught me how to run the books or entrepreneurship or anything like that. But they're both my parents are good communicators. My mom passed away when I was 19, but she was a very good communicator, and a lot of people I don't know, she had a lot of loyalty. A lot of people wanted to be around her and work with her. And I don't know. I don't always think of myself in certain ways, but people that know my mom have described to me that, oh, you're like your mom, you know, and you see that the way you talk to people and people want to, you know, support your business and be part of what you're doing. And I guess that's great and compliment, you know.
Yeah.
It's not universal though. Some people don't want to be part of it, but overall I've had a lot of very, a lot of support through the pandemic. And I think that's because people trust that I will support them in the future if they need it. And of course they value the school and they want to make sure it's going to be there. So.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, and one thing you touched on there too, and maybe this will help me kind of chronologically go backwards too, but did you start training jiu-jitsu with your dad? I know he also trains, but
yeah,
he was after together?
Me. No, he was after me. So I started when I was recently out of high school and looking for something. You know, I wrestled just my senior year in high school. So only one season. So I only just barely got my feet wet and I wanted to keep going. Mm-hmm. And I was watching the UFC and I would watch UFC with my dad. You know, we go to Blockbuster and watch the VHS. UFC, you know, 4 or 5, whatever. Yeah. So I went to an MMA fight, like a local MMA fight, and saw a flyer for jiu-jitsu school opening up. And that was a guy named Eduardo de Lima was opening. So I went there. I was one of his first students. And then my dad started coming like after I'd been there for more than a year at least. And then when I moved to Chicago in 2001, I moved as a high blue belt. I figured my dad would probably quit just because he did it with me, but then he kept going and he eventually got his black belt. So he started at 49 and got his black belt at 50, whatever. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So awesome. Wow. I didn't realize you moved as a blue belt and then continued to train all the way through brown before finally founding your own school. That's pretty amazing. So did you ever fight MMA? Did you ever have an interest in that?
No. I did have an interest. What I told myself was like, oh, maybe when I get my black belt, I'll fight MMA, at least just to do it one time and test myself. Mm-hmm. And then by the time I got my black belt, I wasn't very interested. It was like, I feel like that's one of those things. If you're going to do it, you should have like a burning desire to do it. Yes. And I was only like, maybe. And I figured like, all right, if I don't really feel this, why bother?
I absolutely understand that. Yeah. It's so funny though. It's like, I'm just like you and I'm not unique in this at all. And that like, MMA opened up the door to jiu-jitsu for me. You know, I found it kind of in that, you know, through that conduit, which is so funny. I feel like I hear that pretty often, you know. I guess let me ask this. So when you started, did you start training in the gi or no gi because of the influence of MMA?
Oh, no, it was only gi back then. At least at Eduardo school. I wanted to do no gi. So I actually didn't go to Eduardo's at first. I tried to find some other places. But then, so I went to like 2 or 3 kind of no-gi places, but you know, this is in the late 90s. There was barely anything. Yeah. So the guys that were running it were like, you know, catch wrestlers. And then when I went to Eduardo's school, I just immediately saw a difference. It was like the skill and the technique and the instruction was just a world apart. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll do this gi thing. And, you know, right away, I liked it. It didn't take long to convert me. So
Yeah, for sure. And I've only had the ability of attending one of Eduardo's seminars, but yeah, another great communicator. I could tell the influence. It's funny, like I didn't grow up in martial arts. I grew up in sports, but I do understand now kind of a lineage and why that's important and like kind of why that makes sense too. I think I do anyway. I have a better understanding of a little bit around that. So I guess going backwards a little with Eduardo, did he train with Carlos Jr.? I guess. Yeah.
So he was at Gracie Baja school. He sold it now and he moved to Alaska. But he was Gracie Baja. So like half my lineage was Gracie Baja and half was Carlson Gracie. Because when I moved to Chicago, Carlson Gracie Sr. moved a few months after me and I trained with him for 5 years. That's where I got my purple and brown belt. Yeah. And then I went back to Eduardo to get my black belt. And basically at the time there was more distinction between schools than there is now. Mm-hmm. Like Carlson was known for like the top game smashing style and Gracie Baja was known for like the technical guard and the inverted guard and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But now it's so big and there's so many different players that you can't predict what one person's style is going to be based on where they train.
Mm-hmm. So as like an instructor, like under, you know, from that perspective, how do you, and I love the way you teach, you're very different. I don't feel like you conform to any one sort of thing. I think you're you're fluid and cerebral and that this works, try this, here's combinations. Like you know, and then you're also very good at saying, you know, I'll say something or I've seen something. I'm like, and this will work. And you'll sometimes, and that's important too, because it's like, no, you know, so anyway, but, You know, I say that too. How do you as a teacher determine, like, I guess, to continue your education as an instructor? Does that make sense? You know, 10 years ago, they weren't leg locking. You know, now every purple belt better know how to defend a heel. Blue belt better learn how to defend a heel hook. You know, like, how did you determine to change with the times?
I mean, it's kind of, now that we have a big school with a lot of people and a lot of brown and black belts and everything, I can just absorb through my students. Like, I can learn through them as much as through me. So it's like, I probably have, of everyone in our school, the most jiu-jitsu knowledge that is embodied in one person. Maybe a couple other guys, a couple of black belts are up there, but I don't know as much as 40 people in a class. You know what I'm saying? So the jiu-jitsu knowledge is dispersed amongst all these people. So I can pick up from this guy, from that guy, from this girl, whatever. And that's often how I'm learning. Plus, you learn these days, everything's on the internet if you want to learn. Plus, you go to competitions and watch. But it's really just talking after class, you know, like, oh, I'm trying this, I'm trying that. Let's play around with that position. Or did you see what, you know, Gordon Ryan did? Let's, you know, someone will show me that.
Right.
And, but that's the benefit of having so many advanced people and so many sources of knowledge these days, is that I can learn anything any given day at the gym.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so vast. It just never ends. And like, another reason I love jiu-jitsu, like, I could say a million of them, but like, growing up wrestling, if you were injured or hurt, you couldn't wrestle. You know, like, you were done. I can watch endless film and theory on jiu-jitsu, like, endless. And I can do that with wrestling, but it's not the same. It's not the same.
Well, wrestling, jiu-jitsu is an easier sport than wrestling. I mean, there's no way about it. It's physically easier. It's
very much
because of the way the art works. Your physical prowess isn't as important as wrestling. It's an advantage, but it's not as important. So you can slow things down. You can think about technique. You can, like I said, on the internet, you can watch anything. So it is possible to work through some injuries, not all.
Yeah. How do you, I mean, and this is going to be kind of a silly question. I know it's hard for anybody to like self-critique, but how did you develop your style? And I know not everybody's here is going to ultimately be familiar, but go look them up. Like, if I were to try to describe you, like you're so light, you're so agile, but you're a heavyweight, you know, and you've never, and of course, look, you're a good person. So of course you've never grounded me or hurt me. Right. But like, that's not your game. Like, you're not a bully guy, you're cerebral and you're crazy flexible. Like, how did you develop your game?
Well, my game has changed over time. So it was, when you're coming up through the ranks, especially at you know, I guess blue belt, you do what you're naturally good at. So I started pretty young. I was naturally pretty flexible. I naturally had pretty good balance. So I played a game based around that. You know, I was able to invert pretty easily and things like that. Now that I've gotten older and heavier, and I am thinking more about longevity, my style has totally changed. So I'm not playing nearly as much upside down open guard. I'm playing a lot more like half guard. And it's for two reasons. One is that it's easier on the body. And two, when I was a brown belt, I thought I was underdeveloped in my half guard. So I started working it. And it took me years to catch it up to the rest of my game, and even at the sacrifice of some of my game. But basically, when you're in the lower belts, you look to see where you're good and you focus on that. And when you get to the higher belts, you look to see where you're bad and you focus on that. Yeah. So as I've tried to focus on my weaknesses, they have become my strengths. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. Yeah, it really does. And I think too, like you, this is probably could be afforded this compliment to every black belt, but like, it still amazes me because I'll watch you roll and like your movement is it's just swift. It's like you move from position to position, where it's not like that for me. It's very frenetic, you know, but it's almost like you're like, I'm ready, whop, and then you're in half guard, or then you're out of it. And it's just it's pretty cool to watch. It's really cool.
One thing, going back to something you said earlier, is that you said I'm not a bully, and I never have been. And so I think it's both a personality trait, but it's also that you want, and this is before I even owned a school, but at every school I ever trained with, I always tried to make whoever came in the door feel welcome. So if I would roll somebody half my size, or, you know, like a girl comes in and there's no other girls in the class, and that can be kind of awkward, especially in the old days when there was never any girls. I would roll with them, and I just knew I could work my weight to not fall on them or make them feel uncomfortable. Like, there's certain moves you don't do, like triangle chokes on the first day, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I was always conscious of that. And then when you open a school, you become hyper aware of that you really want to be the person that everybody wants to roll with. And you want everyone to be able to trust you, that you can control yourself as an instructor and as a higher belt. And you can challenge the big guys and you can work with the lightweights and whatever. So.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's so important too. I talked about this once with like Lior, and I've shared this with other people too, but a lot of the reasons, I mean, I was in my own kind of mental place. I really needed the community that Valko guy gave me. And like, it helped put me on a whole positive road like that I needed to be on. And I'm really glad I found. But with that, and you just said something that like really sums it up better than I probably could have on my own, is that like training with some of the black belts from our academy. And I don't want to name names, but meeting with some of the guys and girls, like especially training for Tap Cancer Out, people volunteering their times, like that have families before work, after work, those things, that sacrifice meant a lot to me. But moreover, one thing that like, I've never been able to articulate till you just said the word, but trust is so huge. And you're giving your body to somebody. And, you know, and especially when you're a white belt or a blue belt, you're still novice and you don't even know when you're in danger sometimes. And to have somebody that is taking good care of you and is there to only help you kind of meet your goal is such a beautiful thing. And I found that with like, not one person, not two, like 15, like a lot of people, you know? So
one thing I really try to foster in our school is that, that environment of helping each other. You know, some schools are very like top down, like only the instructor can teach, and only the instructor, like if you have a question, you have to ask the instructor, you can't ask your partner or whatever. And I'm not like that at all. No. I much more want people to help each other. And even if somebody helps somebody a little bit wrong, like shows them a wrong detail or gives them bad advice or something, it's like worth it so that people can get to know each other and build a camaraderie and have relationships that are not so hierarchical as might be found in some traditional martial arts. So, you know, that's something I really try to do. And when we have new people come in, I always put them with like higher belts. And there's a certain, like, I don't know, 20 or 30 people that I know are going to be very good with new people. And I always put them with the new people. And but then I trust that I can look away, you know, I don't have to monitor the situation all the time. I just, good guys that have developed that kind of personality traits. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me, and then transition slightly, but let me say this too, and I skipped it earlier, but I meant to compliment you on the team showing at the Chicago Open. I mean, amazing.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was good. I was happy with it. I mean, we always have good showings. The most important thing for me, and I always tell people before competition is, you know, you might win, you might lose, but try not to mentally give up, you know, just try to keep fighting to the end. There's been amazing comebacks in our sport. It's never over until it's over. And then always just, you know, represent yourself and your school with dignity. You know, when you win, don't showboat or talk shit to your opponent. When you lose with dignity. And we're really good with that. I basically don't have to remind people, but I do always say it before competition.
Sure.
So even in the tournament, when our guys lost over the weekend, everybody lost well, you know, everybody won well. So it was good. I was happy with it.
Also important for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And another thing too, I don't know how this happened. So this is like a fair and honest question too. Like when I started in the school, and maybe we always had this presence and I wasn't aware, but I feel like even with the pandemic over the last year, I feel like the growth of female competitors has like doubled or tripled. It just seems like there's so many more females at our academy now. Maybe it's always been that way and I'm wrong, but is that true? I just think there's so many more competitors.
I mean, it goes up and down. It's right now we have a nice group and they're very supportive of each other. Yeah. But when it gets less girls, it's harder to get more, you know what I'm saying? Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the other day, a group of 4 people come in, 2 guys and 2 girls all together. And they were the only 2 girls there. So I just, you know, in the middle of the class, I was like, just so you know, there's usually some girls here today. And they were both like, oh, good. You know, I was wondering about that. Blah, blah, blah. And then other times, you know, some girls don't care about that at all. But generally speaking, the more you have, the more you get. But yeah, not always. We've had a few for several years that if we've, you know, if they've been the only one for 10 classes in a row or months at a time, you know. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great they came back. And I love that part of our team is growing too, because we got some fierce competitors just all the way through. I mean, man. And that's another thing too. So I'll say about our academy too. I love that. And again, it's about sort of culture. I think that that you've cultivated too, but our school nurtures all those things. You don't have to be a competitor to go to Valko in any way. You could be a total hobbyist and go once a week if you just want exercise, and there's all age groups represented. I can come to an open
all adult age groups.
It's amazing.
I don't have any kids. Yeah.
Well, not all, right? No kids,
yeah.
Adults. Yeah, right. But I think that's pretty cool though, because I'll go to like the open mat on the 4th, and there's like a college student, maybe Tony's son, and then we have people in our mid 60s, late 60s as well. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we got a nice range, and everyone's welcome. I don't like discriminate in favor of certain people. Like, I don't see the athletes come in and be like, all right, yes. And then everyone who's not an athlete be like, but I guess some places do that. You used to see more of that than you do now. Most places are pretty, conscious of that and trying to grow the community and stuff.
Well, I appreciate that. So let me ask this. Was it strange for you when you founded your school to kind of buck the system and not be affiliated with the Gracie or any one of these other big names?
Well, no, my intention was to be a Gracie. I was going to stay at Carlson Gracie School. That's where I was a brown belt, and I was planning to get my black belt. So after senior died, there was a little bit of a moments of uncertainty there, but my plan was to represent Carlson Gracie and eventually get my black belt there and just be a branch of that in Chicago. But for whatever reason, Carlson Jr. Said no to that. So then and he said no after I had already opened the school. So then I was like, all right, well, I guess we called Valko BJJ. I was going to call it Carlson Gracie River North or something like that.
Wow.
So then we just became Valko BJJ, and I'd always been in touch with Eduardo and always trained there when I went to Florida, and my dad was still there. So I just went down there and trained with them, and I just told him the situation and said, when the time is right, I'd like to get my black belt for you when you think it's time. And he was like, okay, yeah. And so I just would go down there every so often and roll, and I'm very happy it worked out the way it did. I imagine how it could have been. It's I think I got the best situation, but it wasn't planned.
Yeah, sure. It's amazing how that works out. So now that fast forward, right? So hopefully we're through the pandemic, the worst of it anyway, and the school is rebounding. I hope. It feels as though that way, and things are moving again and stuff. Do you have any plans this year, personally, to compete?
I might. I would like to do a Masters Worlds. I've never done one. But I don't want to make any promises or anything. It's basically just you have kids, how's the family life going? How are things at the business going? But now that I'm a Masters 3 and I'm on the younger end of it, I should jump in there.
Yeah. Now's the time.
I would like to do something this year. And I haven't competed with the gi in a long time. I generally prefer to compete no gi, but I should dust that thing off and do at least one more tournament. So we'll see.
It'd be cool. It'd definitely be cool to win a Worlds for sure. I mean, in anything. Yeah.
We'll put a big maybe on that.
A big maybe. Yeah. If and when, right? Well, I guess let me digress a little and kind of stop talking jujitsu, man. So outside of jujitsu, what's an interest? What else do you do just from a hobby?
Well, I'm interested in a lot of things. I was thinking about at the beginning of our conversation, you were talking about that I'm a good teacher, and thank you for saying that. But I was thinking about it, am I a good teacher? Because I think what I am is I'm somebody who has a lot of interests, and then I like sharing my interests with people. So jiu-jitsu is an interest of mine, so it's fun for me to share it. So right now I'm listening to some music that not everyone would be into, but there's this band that I'm really into right now. So I'm trying to share it with my wife all the time and explain to her about the singing and the drums and all that. And sometimes she likes it, sometimes she doesn't, but I just like that. So I have a lot of interest. I like jiu-jitsu. I like music. I like reading a lot of books. I like learning a lot of new subjects. I'm kind of a history buff. I like learning about economics.
I've seen that. Were you okay? So let me ask: were you a good student?
No,
not really. Yeah. Well, look, neither was I. So, so I don't put a ton of credence in that, but it's just it's a point to reference, and I ask because like you do have interest in economics and things, like I've seen that, and you're studying markets and these things that are so way over my head, and so it's interesting that like look, we're all different, it's so funny that like that's your mind can work in that way, and I guess
when I get into it, I get pretty into it, like instead of like reading a book on some subject, I'll dive in and read like 10 or 20 books on a certain subject. I remember years ago, I read something, and it's probably nonsense, but it was like one of those like pieces of advice thing on the internet. And it was like, if you want to become an expert in this subject, read 10 books on that subject. And so now I read at least 10 books about everything I want to learn about,
Yeah.
And I certainly can't call myself an expert in all the things, but at least I dive fairly deep, and like I said, I like to, explore deeply and then share those things with people that I think are interested. And it's fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that, I do think you're a good teacher, so you shouldn't question that for sure. Yeah. But if, I guess, to your point, maybe you're a good communicator, and if it's something that you're passionate about, it's easier for you to communicate that. But it's more than enthusiasm. I think it's more, like, I just think that, there's details and there's a subtlety in your communication that, for me, is helpful.
Well, with jiu-jitsu, I've been doing it so long now. There's not that much enthusiasm that I with it. You know what I'm saying?
I get you. Yeah.
When you teach a jiu-jitsu class, there's two things. You got to know the technique. That's like half of it. But you also got to know how to interact with a group of people. Mm-hmm. Largely strong people who want to be interacted with a certain way. So it's like. It's not enough to just relay the technique. You got to, when you're running a business, be able to deal with all the different conflicting personalities. And one of the more challenging things is the egos that bump up against each other, and just being able to manage that without being forceful in it or without putting anyone else down, And I think I'm pretty okay at that. I hope so anyways.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've seen a lot of necessary de-escalation. Yeah, I think we're fairly hurt. Every family's got issues, but I think we're pretty harmonious.
Yeah, no, it's not like that. Not like there's like, how can I mention? It's more just keeping balance all the different personalities that are all looking for something different out of jiu-jitsu. Some people are looking to reach their athletic potential. Some people are looking to lose weight. Some people are looking for like a lot of validation. They just need an instructor to tell them they're doing a good job. And some people don't, they feel patronized when you do that, so it's like balancing those things is something that I think a good instructor has to do. And it takes a little while to develop that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Did you have any books or anything to that end that you sort of studied around that? Was it just sociology things or just like
nothing?
No. Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. That, yeah, you just learn through experience and people. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, I kind of find those. No. Anyways, no.
Yeah, no, I got you. So, and one last thing. So you did mention a couple of your other interests, but I thought of it as you were saying it too. Man, I think you're a good drummer. When did you start drumming?
I'm not very good. I used to play in high school in like a heavy metal band, and then but I haven't played in 20 years, except for like last year. Some of the jiu-jitsu guys met up and played. And I realized how much I sucked after so much time off. I was not impressed with myself. But one good thing about playing a musical instrument is that when you listen to music, you listen differently than if you don't play a musical instrument. And that's true. Like, when you do jiu-jitsu, a UFC fight looks different than if you don't do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So same thing. So I think that having some training in music, I just have a discerning ear for certain things. So like when I listen to certain things and I try to share with other people, I can tell they're not hearing the same thing I'm hearing often.
Yeah. No, that makes sense completely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. You completely interpret it differently when you know more of what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And hearing,
Yeah. Yeah. Especially from a drumming perspective, because as a percussionist, you're holding the beat or the tempo. Like so much of the crux of the music it's like you're the backbone, right? You're the bass a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times drums like just keep the tempo right, and you have to be trained to hear all the weird things they're doing in between, especially with like a good talented drummer. Like I really like Danny Carey. He's the drummer of Tool, and he's the weirdest drummer you're going to see. He's got all these, his hands and feet are going at different speeds. It's called polyrhythm, and not everyone can hear that. Yeah. So I guess it's just a blessing to have some training so that you can, I can on that those notes or whatever. So.
It's awesome. Yeah. Did you like the drummer of Rush? I know he passed away like last year.
Oh yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, Neil Peart. Oh yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, awesome.
What was his name?
Neil Peart.
So what are a couple of and then we'll come up a little bit on time, but I definitely want to ask you this too. I made a mental note. Who are some of your current like favorite jiu-jitsu players, and then maybe who were some of your earlier influences too?
Well, I don't. Nothing current, you know, like I don't, I'm not, maybe I've just been doing it too long, but I don't follow it really. Like sometimes I like to watch some matches, but I almost always, if it's on YouTube, I just go ahead until I see a position changed and then I'll go back to see where it changed. But no one now, but when I was younger, I mean, I watched UFC. I liked Ken Shamrock because he looked like a superhero.
Yeah, I love Shamrock, man.
And, yeah, so that was like an early inspiration. Then, of course, Hoist, because Hoist was smaller than everybody, still a good fighter. Yeah. And that, you know, around 2004, Marcelo Garcia, I think that's when he had his really big year in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
So they were like big influences. But now it's, I don't. It's nothing now, you know.
Yeah, it is about the now, and you know what's pretty amazing is like again, I'm still new, you know, I'm still under 3 years in this, and so I'm learning every day, you know, in some part, but it's still so amazing to me just watching tape or videos, YouTube and stuff. Like I really feel like the sport has made leaps in like past maybe 5 years or 10 years and stuff, because I'll look at someone like a Marcelo Garcia and like ADCC and like. He's amazing to me, the way he moved and his butterfly guard, all this stuff. But the way he approached jiu-jitsu then, even Nogi, is totally different than like a Gordon Ryan now or anyone.
Yeah, the last, I don't know, 5+ years, it's really evolving very quickly. You know, both gi and no-gi. They're doing grips in the gi that nobody did when I was coming up, you know. Really? It makes you wonder how much further there is to evolve. Like, is it going to keep going, or is there some upper limit? There must be, but are we close to it? I don't know. It's hard to say. But yeah, things are really going faster than they used to, and the top guys are really good, much better than they used to be. So.
Well, yeah, and it's pretty cool because I feel like being that the styles are so like, I don't know, it's not strict like old Gracie stuff where it's like triangle armbar and stuff. Like now it is really fluid. Even in the gi, you can heel hook at black belt. Like things are changing.
No, you can't. Not in the gi. Yeah, you can't heel hook in the gi.
No gi. I'm sorry, black belt. Yeah, that would make more sense. But one thing I did want to pick your brain on too about the sort of what you just said around grips. Are you referring to like lapel game stuff? Or just
pretty much.
Grips in general? Yeah.
No, yeah, all the stuff that Keenan's doing, all that kind of stuff. It's
like quicksand. I don't understand it.
Well, it's interesting that it took as long as it did to develop. You know, it's kind of weird. Like looking back, I'm kicking myself. Like, why didn't I come up with some of this?
Yeah, they were here the whole time. But
right, exactly.
Who saw it? Yeah, exactly.
So it's just a discovery process, and now that there's so many practitioners and so many more resources, the discoveries are happening faster and faster.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. All right. Well, let me ask this too. I try to ask some folks this, and maybe we can end there. Do you have any good book recommendations or anything along that thing? Anything that you're working on or in the past that you found kind of helpful or anything insightful?
Man, yeah, it's almost you got to do it by genre. Sure. I guess the answer I usually give, and I guess I'll keep it here, is a book called Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb.
Okay.
It's a little technical for people, you know, that maybe aren't into finance. It's largely about finance, but it's not completely about finance. And I guess the reason is it explains 3 different conditions. There's fragile, you know, you break easy. There's robust, which means you don't break easy, you're hard to break. And then there's anti-fragile, which is you get stronger with things that try to break you. So things that try to break you make you stronger. And the book is about that, and it's largely centered on finance, but it can be applied to a lot of things. But I think that way of thinking is very helpful, and to immerse yourself in and as a lens to look through. So I guess that's the one I would give, but it's certainly not going to be for everybody.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's cool. I love it. See, I buy these books. I read these. I'm always looking for different things. That's cool. If nothing else, it's a good lens to look through. Maybe. Definitely.
I mean, even just what I said there. So those 3 ways of looking. Now you'll start to think about those. Like, am I fragile? Am I robust? Or am I anti-fragile? And are my finances fragile, robust, or anti-fragile? Is the U.S. economy fragile, robust, or anti-fragile? And once you start looking at it, you can see how anti-fragile is the way you want things to be.
That led me into another question. I lied. That wasn't the last question. So was it, this is kind of a chicken and egg kind of question maybe. So your interest around economics, finance, things like that, is it a product of you were a business owner and like, hey, I have to prioritize my bills, these things?
No, nothing like that. My interest in finance came after my interest in economics. I think economics was mostly, somehow or another, I started reading a couple books. Freakonomics was the first one I read.
Okay, I read that.
And that's a very good beginner book because it gives you the lens.
Yeah.
And I like the lens for analyzing things. So it's not so much like I can't do econometrics. I'm not good at math. It's not that. It's more the lens of trying to see the world through trade-offs and through costs, like a lot of people, they just think, they think too much like in solutions and not in trade-offs. So I like economics because it really, makes you think of, but on the other hand, so that's a inside baseball joke for economics, but
I get the, there's different, economical impact. Man, I would have loved to have actually picked your brain last year during election and everything. Just when the economy is just, everything has been so in flux and it's like, I don't even know. Like it's hard.
I don't even think about economics that way. So there is looking at the economy, but that's not the lens I approach it through. That's too big. That's too like, I just like it more for, just the trade-off. Like the first thing you learn in economics is opportunity cost. So that means by sitting here talking to you, I'm foregoing everything else I could have been doing with this last 45 minutes. Right. So there's a cost to this discussion, and it's what I could have done with this time. And that's very simple, but a lot of people don't think about that. So very often once you start to think that way, you just see that the costs associated with all of your finite time and resources, and it's a, powerful lens, I think.
Absolutely. Do you does that help prioritize your personal time, professional time? Like, are you a checklist guy? Do you keep
No, none of that. No, not at all. But it does help me think through priorities for sure. But no, I definitely am not a checklist, wake up early, any of that stuff.
One thing you said, you didn't say this previously, but again, it's so funny that I know you, but oftentimes I'm like, I'm such a fan of people I talk to, but I'm a fan of you. But you had posted something forever ago, man, online. And it was so impressive to me. It was a picture of you and 2 of your students. And both of them were Ivy League educated, graduates,
three of our students. Yeah.
And it was just a cool perspective. They call you perspective and the sharing of knowledge and the commonality of BJJ, but then it grows, from there.
Well, I mean, the joke was they call me professor. And they all have PhDs, and I think it was behavioral economics, physics, and math. Which I'm nowhere in all that, but I have my jiu-jitsu PhD, I guess we would call it.
Yeah, but you are exactly.
But also the main point was the main point aside from the joke is that jiu-jitsu brings people together.
Right.
Like, it's awesome that they have those things, but really I don't care when they show up to class. And we're just guys who train together and it's fun, so those people are very impressive, but it's also jiu-jitsu. My point was jiu-jitsu is a great equalizer.
Absolutely.
It's so you got it.
No, 1,000,000%. And I have made friends with people I never would have talked to 1,000,000% on the street. Like, and I don't know if that says more about me, but or exposure, just people I wouldn't have met normally. But I definitely have friends that I've met via Valko, but BJJ that I'm like, man, when would we have ever hung out before?
Well, right. You need the setting to find that, that chemistry, but also jiu-jitsu is the unique setting because it's kind of like, for lack of a better word, it's like intimate, right? Like you're very close. You could hurt somebody.
Yeah.
You can break somebody's spirit, and also people go there often, especially with COVID and everything else. didn't have a lot of other places to go, you know, when we were open at least.
Right.
And it's the only time they would see other people. So it's just a lot of things come together in like a unique way.
For sure, foster really good bonds. Yeah, awesome. Well, man, Jay, thank you. I think we're come up on time. Again, this was I appreciate, again, you making the time, finding the time. I've been looking forward to this for about 40 episodes. So I'm really thrilled we made it happen.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, congrats on your success. You know, like I said, I'm number 41. And I mean, I listened to your interview with Mark Kerr. I really liked it. I texted you after that one. I just always wondered, you know, what happened to him. And yeah, just you got some big names on here. So good job.
Yeah, thank you. Honestly, no one is like candidly more surprised than me. I just ask, and people have asked me, they're like, how did you get such and such or whatever? And I'm like, well, I sent a message on Instagram. Like, I just asked, you know, and there's no one that's ever been on this show that I sincerely am not like a fan of. And you included, and I don't have to, there's very little, I mean, there's a lot of that goes into the scheduling, production, edit, there's a lot of work that goes into it. But the truth is, like, there's no work for me. I don't have to prep. Most people, I've read their book already. I've done, you know, like, they're here because I appreciate them, you know, and you included, want to learn more about you. So it's like total labor of love, if I can even call it that. It's just awesome. I love this. You know, it's just a cool hobby, I guess. I don't know what to call it. Yeah.
Well, cool.
Thank you again, Jay. I'll see you soon at class.
All right. Sounds good, John. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. True story, John Gibson and Jay Valko.